Good day. We are from Group 6 of 4i Bio, and today we're going to be talking about Exercise 5, specifically vaccine development, and the brand that was assigned to our group is Janssen. So to start, we're going to briefly discuss the summary and the description of this vaccine. People usually mispronounce this as Janssen, but since this is a pharmaceutical company from Europe, it is actually pronounced as Janssen. So Janssen COVID-19 vaccine was created in collaboration with Johnson& Johnson or J&J, Janssen Pharmaceutical, and the Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center. There are different descriptions and characteristics of this vaccine, but for our group, we'll only be discussing the three main parts presented here on screen. So first is the biological classification, associated therapies, and its current category or groups as a commercially available vaccine. So first, it is a recombinant vaccine, and when it comes to its associated therapies, it is active when it comes to its immunization. And lastly, while it is already an approved vaccine, it is also still considered as investigational since there are still a lot of research studies or journal articles relating to how it can affect other people, how its mechanisms change with different kinds of people, and how reactions are being still studied through the medicinal field. So later, it will be briefly discussed as we move along the presentation. Now, this type of vaccine is actually a viral vector vaccine. So what is a viral vector vaccine? This is based on a human adenovirus, specifically an adenovirus type 26. So this is actually weakened or a harmless type of vector virus. And it produces the SARS-CoV-2 spike protein, and through this, it trains our immune system to fight off COVID-19 or SARS-CoV-2. So I will be discussing in depth the mechanism of action and how it actually helps in the process of immunity or achieving immunity for the people who are vaccinated. So as what I mentioned, this vector is an adenovirus and it acts like a Trojan horse. So this adenovirus is delivered to the cells or specifically to the nucleus. As you can see in figure 1, shown on screen, there are specific steps on how this vaccine is injected and how it can help in the immunity. So as shown on step 1, the spike protein of the COVID-19 virus is extracted, and specifically the genetic material of that spike protein. So once it is extracted, it is now inserted to the inactive or the harmless vector virus, which is the adenovirus that I've mentioned. So I would just like to reiterate that this is unrelated or harmless. So it has no effect on the person being vaccinated. So let's say it is already inserted. Now, this virus containing the spike protein, the genetic material of the spike protein, is already in the vaccine. Now, we inject it to the person who wants to be vaccinated. So step 3 shows that the virus enters the human cell. So with that, step 4, it is seen that the COVID-19 spike proteins are now created. So this red mark there that looks like a T is the COVID-19 virus spike protein. So the immune system is triggered with the presence of this spike protein. So nare-recognize na ni immune system na there was something inserted in the body. So with that, the body now produces specific antibodies to fight off that spike protein. So this is a specific antibody against the COVID-19 virus. So in relation to that, to achieve immunity, if ever that a COVID-19 virus affects you, or like the real legitimate virus is already there in your body, you won't be affected that much since there are already antibodies available due to that spike protein through the virus, the adenovirus vector inserted in that vaccine. So these antibodies will bind to that virus so that it will stop replicating. So that's actually the role of the vector virus and the antibodies created due to this vaccine.
The Janssen COVID-19 vaccine was primarily based on a clinical trial with a median age of 52 years old, looking at the prevention of symptomatic laboratory-confirmed COVID-19. Vaccine efficiency against symptomatic COVID after at least 14 days of vaccination was 66.3%. At 14 days, there was also an observed 63% efficacy seen across all ages, sex, race, ethnicity, and persons with underlying medical conditions. Moreover, vaccine efficacy for the prevention of COVID-19 associated hospitalization was high. Overall, 31 COVID cases were documented after 14 days of vaccination, with 29 being in the placebo group and only 2 in the vaccine group. Lastly, symptoms were mostly mild to moderate and resolved 1 to 2 days after vaccination. No specific safety concerns were identified in subgroup analyses by age, race, ethnicity, and underlying medical conditions. The per-protocol population of the study included 19,630 SARS-CoV negative participants who received the vaccine. The Janssen vaccine was then inferred to have protected against moderate to severe critical COVID-19 with a rate of 66.9% at an onset of at least 14 days after administration. Moreover, a key finding was that despite a 94.5% COVID occurrence rate in South Africa, there was at least a 52% vaccine efficacy against moderate and severe cases with an onset of at least 14 days after admission, with at least a 73.1% efficacy in severe to critical cases. For the last journal, a study population involving 597 participants was used. From the study, it is revealed that the booster was relatively safe, with a vast majority of those administered the booster shot only experiencing slight discomfort, as seen on slide. Additionally, with those that did experience discomfort, a total of 90% experienced bearable side effects, most of which experience only injection site pain and fatigue. Lastly, the data indicates that the booster vaccine induces a robust immune response against SARS-CoV-2.
Johnson storage requirement. The COVID vaccine is supplied in a carton containing 10 multi-dose vials. Each vial consists a maximum of 5 doses where 0.5 ml can be withdrawn. Once the box is out of the storage, the vials should not be exposed to any sunlight to avoid increasing the temperature of the vial that results in reducing the potency of the vaccine. For storaging and handling of the vaccine, frozen vaccines should be placed in a freezer to maintain its temperature. This should have a shelf life of 24 months. For thawed unopened vaccines, it should be placed in a refrigerator. The vials should not be refreezed once thawed. This should have a shelf life of 11 months after removal from the freezer. Thawed open vaccines are placed in a refrigerator for up to 6 hours. If the vaccine is not used, the vials should be discarded within this time. The Janssen COVID-19 vaccine is administered to individuals 18 years of age and older. 0.5 ml of the vaccine should be injected to the muscles of the arm of the individual. The number of dose and gaps in between each dose of the Janssen is based on the following. Individuals who will take the vaccine as their primary vaccination will be administered with a single dose, while the vaccine will be administered as a single booster dose to individuals that have at least 2 months after primary vaccination of Janssen vaccine, and to individuals who have taken primary vaccination of any authorized COVID-19 vaccine.
Next are the side effects of this vaccine, which includes reactions in the injection site such as pain, redness of skin, and swelling. General side effects such as headache, fatigue, muscle aches, fever, and on rare cases, blood clots and tinnitus may occur, as well as diarrhea and vomiting. Moving on to the components of the vaccine. First, this includes the recombinant replication and competent adenovirus type 26 expressing the SARS-CoV-2 spike protein. Next is the citric acid monohydrate, which acts as a pH buffer in order to maintain its stability. Then for salts, there is trisodium citrate dihydrate and sodium chloride, which is also for stabilization. For sugars, there are HPBCD, which acts as a solubilizing agent, and polysorbate 80, which acts as an emulsifier. And lastly is ethanol, which helps prevent the growth of bacteria and other microorganisms that can contaminate the vaccine.
Now, let us move on to the timeline of the Janssen vaccine during the pandemic. First, did you know that in February 2021, a part of the third phase of the vaccine trial was held in the Philippines? This was held in Metro Manila, but the dates and specific locations were not disclosed. Next, after 2 months, it was now finally granted an emergency use authorization by the FDA as they have been satisfied with the conditions under the Executive Order number 121 series of 2020. Now we highlight here two important parts for the EUA, which is the validity and the scope of the authorization. The validity states that the EUA is only valid within and 1 year after the COVID-19 public health emergency, while the scope indicates that only Johnson & Johnson shall be the one to supply the vaccine, and this should only be administered to individuals with ages 18 or older. Next, in October 2021, after assessment by the Health Technology Assessment Council, the Janssen vaccine was not recommended for the pediatric population due to the limited clinical evidence on their use in the pediatric population at the time. Now, in April 2022, another EUA was published allowing the Janssen vaccine to be used as booster shots. This can be a homologous booster for those primarily vaccinated with Janssen. Moreover, those primarily vaccinated with other vaccine series may also choose Janssen as their heterologous booster shot. Now, in July 22, the COVID-19 public health emergency was lifted. This meant that the vaccine's emergency use authorization will only be valid for 1 more year. With this, as we are now in October 2023, this emergency use authorization is not anymore valid. Lastly, a month after, the Johnson & Johnson applied for a full approval for certification of product registration, making Johnson & Johnson the only vaccine to apply for CPR in the country.
How is it the Johnson vaccine is administered as 2 doses in other countries? Johnson vaccine is typically administered as a single-dose vaccine in most countries, like in the US and Europe. However, some countries have chosen to use it as a 2-dose regimen in certain circumstances. The decision of a country may be based on several factors, including the prevalence of COVID-19 variants in the region and the vaccine's effectiveness. Health authorities in a country may have authorized to administer it as a 2-dose vaccine to enhance and prolong the immunity of the people, especially in the face of new variants of the virus.
So, what is the purpose of polysorbate 80 as an emulsifier? An emulsifier can be defined as a substance that helps in homogenizing liquids that do not normally mix, such as oil and water. In this case, polysorbate 80 helps in creating a stable emulsion of lipids in the Janssen COVID-19 vaccine.
Now, for our fourth question, what is an emergency use authorization? Well, simply put, an emergency use authorization is an authorization issued for unregistered drugs and vaccines in a public health emergency. In the case of the COVID-19 pandemic in the Philippines, the FDA Director General, by virtue of the Executive Order Number 121 of the President of the Philippines, authorizes the issuance of the EUA. The EUA for vaccines last pandemic contains information such as details about the vaccine, its scope and limitation, the dosage strength, form and its administration, cold chain management, pharmacovigilance, the responsibility of emergency response stakeholders and vaccination providers, and the validity of the EUA.
So for the next question, among all types of vaccines, what do you think is the best type of COVID-19 vaccination? Well, as for me and as for our group, there is no best type of vaccine since there are different pros and cons per type of vaccine, and there are different effects depending on the people being vaccinated actually. So for example, there are, aside from those that we have discussed, especially Janssen, which is a vector vaccine, there are different types of vaccine as well. Like, for example, there is also a messenger RNA or an mRNA vaccine, as well as a protein subunit vaccine. So other brands such as Pfizer and Moderna, they are messenger RNA vaccines. So they are mRNA vaccines. While another brand such as Novavax is a protein subunit vaccine. So the AstraZeneca and the Janssen are vector vaccines. And studies show that these vaccines are reliable and they mitigate the effects of the risks and the health implications of being infected with COVID-19. So while they may be different in terms of the mechanisms and the effects to its people, the end goal is just the same. It is to achieve immunity. So for us, as long as it still fulfills the purpose of providing immunity to the people, then it is considered good and doable enough vaccine. So it is hard to compare really the different types of vaccines since it has different effects on people. One kind of vaccine may be good for you and one may be not so good. Like it may have different side effects, but at the end of the day, you still get the immunity that you wish to acquire. So these vaccines, though they may be different in terms of its composition and its mechanism, it's all the same in terms of providing immunity. So to answer the question, there is no best type of vaccine since it depends on the people involved in the vaccination.
So, what is the grade approach for Janssen vaccine? The grading of recommendation assessments, development, and evaluation, or GRADE for short, assesses the certainty of evidence for outcomes related to the vaccine, rated on a scale of 1 being high certainty to 4 which is very low certainty. From the GRADE evidence assessment, based from the journals, the level of certainty for the benefits of the Janssen COVID-19 vaccine was type 2, being moderate certainty, for the prevention of symptomatic COVID-19. Evidence was also type 2 for moderate certainty for the estimate of prevention of COVID-19 associated hospitalization and death. So that concludes our report. Thank you for listening and have a great day.